Unicorn Roast.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Unicorn Roast podcast. I'm Emily Forlini, and I'm here with Mike Elgin. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Emily. It's great to get the band back together and do another podcast. This was a crazy week of news. So much news this week.
So much, yes. We have a jam-packed agenda.
I mean, yesterday alone, yesterday was Friday. There was more news on that day than, tech news than I've seen in a long time. But one of the things I've been thinking about is robot training, which is a big deal because everything's going robotic, not only in manufacturing, but increasingly it's creeping out of the factories and into many other spheres. And robots aren't automatically trained. You don't just throw some AI into a robot and it functions. It has to be trained on every single physical task that it does. And this is super expensive. And one of the ways that they train robots is they have a human operator who's wearing special gloves and something that looks like a VR goggles. They do tasks, let's say folding laundry. They sit there and fold laundry all day.
Is this kind of like when they trained the guy who played Gollum in Lord of the Rings?
I'm sure it was
They
exactly
had
like
him in
that.
costume, and then
Yes.
they kind of like filmed him, and then they modeled Gollum off of it.
Something like that. Although that would be a failure in robotics training because of the amount of individual specific work that had to be done after the fact. So what they're trying to get to the point of is just have the data be there and the robot be able to use that data to know how to do things.
Right.
And so you remember, I think we've mocked it on this podcast before, but you remember the big cocktail party at Tesla where they rolled out those cars.
Yeah.
Of course you do, because you cover cars. And those were teleoperated robots. And that was
they're kind of like remote control cars.
Exactly.
Much.
So there were Tesla engineers, there were Optimus engineers somewhere nearby, with goggles and gloves, and they were pretending to be robots. And all that was fine, except they lied about it. But that was a small leap because that's how they train those robots. It's a daily thing for them to get in those same goggles, wear the same gloves, all the other stuff, and go through a series of mundane tasks to train the robots. Well, Meta has a platform called Aria, which is it's sort of a researchers, developers, smart glasses tool. It's hardware and software. There's a development kit, all that stuff. And it's been used at Georgia Tech to figure out how to accelerate the training of robots through glasses. So what they do is somebody puts on these Aria glasses. They look kind of like Meta glasses. There's a lot more stuff on them, but they're
interesting.
Pretty close to regular glasses. They don't look like VR glasses. And then the person does the tasks, and then AI software that's been developed by Georgia Tech engineers takes those tasks and they sort of convert it to the physicality of the robotic body, basically. So when a human hand turns a certain way, they convert the 3D space of that hand where it's located exactly in 3D space. And they convert it into how the robot hand pivots and moves and all that kind of stuff. So it's very refined.
They probably put like sensors on the hand at different spots and then measure how it moves, right?
I think they're trying to get away from that, actually. They're trying to do it all through the camera in the glasses.
Oh, got it.
Here's the part I love the most. Then they take the glasses off the person and they put the glasses on the robot.
Okay.
So now this robot is wearing glasses. And so
have you seen footage of this?
Yes, I have. They're not humanoid robots. They're kind of like quasi-humanoid. But there's glasses. Like at the top of the robot, there's a pair of glasses watching everything. It's very funny. But it's the thing that's recorded in the glasses. And then when essentially the visuals from the glasses is poured into the robot's AI. And it's exactly what the human saw. So they're bypassing a whole bunch of engineering problems by just saying, here, this is exactly what those glasses were pointed at when the humans were doing it. And anyway, so they have all these metrics about how much faster they can train robots and all this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, there's another set of research that's been happening in healthcare for a number of years, where they're doing similar type research where nurses and doctors are using phones and microphones and cameras to train hospital robots, and they're explicitly training it. They're saying, "Hey, robot, check this out. Here's how
Mm-hmm.
you do something." And what that software is doing is let's say they're showing a robot how to sort of inject a needle into a human body, which probably we shouldn't be teaching them
Oof,
how to
no,
do.
thank you.
Um, and and then the robot software that was developed by certain pioneers in this field basically take the one or two or three demonstrations, and they sort of in software create 1,000, so that they can learn from a very small set. If you put all
Mm-hmm.
this together, we could be looking at a future where robots are trained sort of like LLMs are. So LLMs, basically, they just take all the stuff that people have been doing, whether it's creating art or photos or writing words, and they pour all that in, and then they train the LLM on that data.
Mm-hmm.
We could get to a point where all these smart glasses data, when everybody's wearing smart glasses, is captured by companies like Meta and all the huge number of companies that are going to be making smart glasses, and just handing it over to the robot people, and they're just going to grab the videos that make sense because, of the people using like multimodal AI in say 10 years, there could be millions of hours of people doing the dishes,
Right.
and you could train a robot how to do the dishes
Right. Well,
with
I'm
those
even
videos.
seeing,
Yeah.
yeah, even in the autonomous car space, like so Tesla has the whole fleet of cars, like people who have full self-driving, quote unquote, not actually self-driving, supervised self-driving. So like all people who own Teslas are collecting data, but the other car companies are feeling behind, like they don't have all these cars on the road. So they're actually using AI to simulate driving behavior. So they are creating data with no actual training subject.
Is that a good idea? What do you think?
So I interviewed the guy who's doing this for Honda. Like he's a CEO of the company who's doing it for Honda. And initially I was like, wow, that's horrifying. Like
Yeah.
seems like so much could go wrong.
Yeah.
But then he kind of convinced me a little bit because they can simulate and focus on really specific dangerous scenarios because like ideally like 95 to 99% of what humans do is really boring, and so actually the data
Right.
that's collected isn't that helpful and doesn't prepare the model for like nightmare scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're doing with the AI is like honing in on the
Mm-hmm.
most important moments and simulating it. But again, I don't. It sounds good. I'd have to like
Right.
work with the data myself at this point to really make a
Right.
call. But those are the different approaches.
On the one hand, they're not really capturing human driver data, but on the other
Mm-hmm.
hand, human drivers are probably not the best model. I think that in the end, we want AI to do much better than humans do in stressful
Right.
situations, like when the lamp falls over and lightning strikes, and then there's a poodle there and a woman with a baby carriage, and all this has
Sorry,
happening at
what
once.
scenario is this?
Oh, this is your typical,
Is
just
did something
Silicon Valley
happen to you in
commute.
childhood?
Yes,
What the
yes. It's horrible. I really could have used a robot. Where are they when we need one? But like, you know what I mean? A computer should be able to like in milliseconds be able to
Yeah,
figure out how to deal with all that stuff. Whereas a
right,
person would be like, duh, I don't know what to do. And
right.
so, yeah, so that's, we'll see. We have to hope that they know what they're doing. So,
We have to hope. I definitely feel like they're gonna, what's the expression, like break a few eggs on the way to something better. And we already see that with self-driving cars we talked about last
right,
time. Like there are stupid issues, and with the robots,
right,
like, there will be something that just really messes up something for real, and there are lawsuits or injuries or stock tanked or all the things that could
right.
go wrong. But then in the end, quote unquote, it could work out. It's kind of the hope. But
It's fun. It's funny. Years ago, when they were talking about self-driving cars, 15 years ago, there was a lot of excitement about an idea that I don't hear about very much anymore, which is that self-driving cars could communicate with each other to do crazy
yeah,
stuff, like to form these high-speed trains on the highway where they're like totally tailgating
yeah.
each other and going 150 miles an hour because the computer's like controlling all this stuff.
Right. Well, what I
Um,
want is all the cars at a stoplight to just coordinate. We're gonna
yeah,
go now. And so there's not that
Yes.
weight of that bumper
Right.
cars vibe. This would be like everyone agrees, okay, green light, we all go. And that would just be
Yes.
nice.
Well, the larger context is so much traffic is caused by people starting and
Hmm.
stopping, and
Hmm.
if somehow if like let's say there's a traffic jam, if everybody went the exact same speed and slowly sped up, there'd be no traffic half the time in rush
Yeah.
hour traffic. It's like some person in front of you is accelerating, then you're braking, then the person behind you brakes, and then you accelerate, and they're still braking, and all that inefficiency and all those delayed reactions are part of
Hmm.
what cause traffic
Hmm.
jams. And you could eliminate all that if our robot overlords were running everything. So
Yeah, it's just interesting times with the robot example and the cars. Like we're actively in a time where these machines are being released and they're in our midst. Like
yeah,
we don't know if the car next to us is driving itself. We
yeah,
don't know if I mean, I guess you definitely would know if you're working in a factory if a robot's next to you. I
yeah,
mean, so maybe that's a little different, but it's we're starting to mix in the robots like a little hint here, a little hint there, and then
right.
what we're hearing from, Amazon, Nvidia, like all the tech people is they want to make it so we actively are partnering with robots, whether it's a software in your computer or these
Hmm.
examples, and they're kind of supercharging our productivity, I guess, is the
Yeah,
goal. And so they're all saying, "Oh, this the agentic AI thing." You're hearing that, right?
yes,
It's like everywhere. That's the same. We'll all have our own little AI agents, our own little
right.
robots, whether they're in the computer or physically next to us. And so
Yeah,
that's
and
the
and
current thinking in tech. I don't know.
yeah, and it's funny because so much of this stuff happens in the abstract for the vast majority of people. So for most
Hmm.
people listening or watching this podcast, and who reads tech stuff and who pays attention to what's going on, they're reading about robots in our midst. There's delivery robots here and there. There's Waymo cars delivering passengers. There's all this kind of stuff happening. Robot pets from Japan. It's like
Yeah.
all kinds of crazy stuff, and they don't ever see it. And when you first see something like that in the wild, like if you go to San
Hmm.
Francisco, you will see, or Los Angeles, you will see Waymo cars all over the place. I've
Right.
seen so many Waymo cars that there were three deep on waiting for a red light, one
Yeah.
after the other, just by coincidence because there's so many of them in the city. And San Francisco is actually a very small city, and so people who work in Amazon warehouses are absolutely quote unquote
Hmm.
partnering with robots
Hmm.
every day, all the
Right.
time, everywhere, and
Right.
as you know. So
I mean, on that one, so like when I worked at Amazon, I spent a week in an Amazon warehouse. I mean, I spent more than a week, but there was specifically a week where I did all the jobs in the warehouse. So it was like
really,
they would send employees to connect with like how the products were being shipped. So we were developing software and all this stuff that would be used in the gigantic fulfillment centers, but it was like a way to get employees to know like the results and just how the business functions. So we spent a week doing all the various functions, and they actually tracked our metrics along with the other employees too, because they track like their rates and stuff. And that was interesting for me because there were some jobs that were a lot of walking. Like you have to walk and find the item that the customer ordered, like down shelves. And at the end of it, this was a while ago. This was in like 2016 or 17. I did this, and I was like, you know what? I feel like I just want a robot to go find that item and bring it to me. Because it was a lot of physical labor to just go to a bin and scan a
hmm,
barcode and pick the
yeah,
thing. And they do have robots that do that. They're
right.
non-humanoid. They're called
No, it's a box
Kiva
with
robots.
wheels, basically, right?
It's a box with wheels, and I was like, that would make this job better.
Yeah,
But of course, it
or
takes away jobs. Yeah,
right, or robotic roller skates would be great. Just take me there, and
yeah, or a scooter, a go kart.
yeah,
It's just like, why is there so much walking,
yeah,
just for that job specifically?
right,
Other ones you just stand there and things come to you, or you
yeah,
process returns or whatever.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've never seen a humanoid robot. Working. I saw a ton at CES. Like,
Hmm.
have you seen one like for real?
Not a good one. I've seen bad
Yeah.
ones for real.
Like,
But yeah,
have you been served like ice cream by a
no, no,
robot or
no, nothing
something?
like that. I've
Okay.
seen them at
Yeah.
tech shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've seen them at tech shows, but I haven't seen one in my life, which is
Yeah,
the self-driving car example you're giving, right? Like
Right.
you're walking down the road and there's a car with no one behind the driver's seat that goes
Right.
past you.
And I've ridden in the passenger seat with
Yeah.
nobody in the driver's seat through San Francisco, heavy traffic, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's a really different experience for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's
Just
cool.
that you can feel the robotic sort of AI controlling everything, looking around, spotting everything. They have a display that kind of shows you what it's seeing in a sort of limited
Right.
way. It just shows you the main things that it's noticing, and that's very very weird. But these, we're all going to see these things pretty soon, and humanoid robots are. Imagine, I mean, so you're talking about walking a great distance. How obviously inefficient would it be to just have a robot ambling down the cement lane to go find the thing? You want
Mm-hmm.
something on wheels, right? That's like flying, and
Yeah.
wheels are so much
Yeah.
more efficient.
Right. You just want, a good old fashioned, like motorized, just going down. Like, we are all familiar with that, which is pretty much what it does. And then the tech is just, I mean, it needs inside it in its software, it's saying, oh, go scan barcode ABC. And so it just searches until it finds ABC and then scans it. And that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's wild, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. No matter how much I complain about it editorially, companies keep trying to make fake human beings. We'll get to a little bit of
Yeah.
that. We'll look at one component of that in a minute, but you've been contemplating the world of hearing aids in the form of Apple AirPods. What, like,
Yeah.
I've been curious about that. That's a fascinating idea, I think. What's going on? Are these any good?
Yeah. So Apple has FDA approved AirPods Pro 2. So
Yeah,
uh, going back, hearing aids were not available over the counter for like forever, and so you have to go to an audiologist and spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a pair of hearing aids, which is a big burden for older people and just very complex. And so in 2022, the FDA made hearing aids available over the counter, like Best Buy, Walmart, CVS. Like you can get a minor hearing aid that's a lot cheaper. You don't have to pay the doctor's fee. And so Apple has seized on this and certified their AirPods to be FDA approved hearing aids. So they're $200. It's the AirPods Pro 2. They received their certification in the fall. I think it was September, October or something. So they've been out for a couple months, and basically, I wrote an article. It's like, are they any good? Of course, they still look like AirPods, so they're
right,
in your ears, but like
right.
people are buying them, and this is such a unique idea. And basically, we just put out a feeler on the internet for people to respond to about like if they buy these uh, Apple AirPod Pros. And I limited the survey just to people. I said 65 and older, and you also have a hearing aid because I wanted the real deal. Because like I think hearing loss starts, like even
Right.
40s. I mean, even
Right.
25-year-olds are wearing hearing aids because they're just ears are destroyed from concerts. But
Right.
in general, like 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you're starting to lose some hearing. And people typically wait until they're like really having problems to get a hearing aid. But
Yeah.
the AirPod Pros, I think people who are much younger are trying out.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful thing. I didn't want those people though, because I
Yeah.
wanted to compare to if you actually have a hearing aid.
No, it's great you did it that way because a lot of times, it's some 25-year-old like tech writer who's put them in. It's like, yeah, it sounds great,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, that's not the test. The test is what's the you know real world experience compared to actual
right.
hearing aids that are expensive and so on. And but it is kind of funny that the whole hearing aid industry has been innovating by making them sort of disappear, so you can't really see them. They have these clear things.
Yeah,
They
it's
have.
amazing.
I know a lot. I know a bunch of people who wear hearing aids, and like I hang out with them for like days and days, and then eventually I'm like, wait a minute, they wear a hearing aid, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't even
I'm kind of
notice.
excited to get to that point. I'm like
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
weird.
But the AirPod thing is like, oh, it's kind of an alternative to trying to hide the fact you're wearing a hearing aid. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm listening to music, and you don't know what they're doing with it.
Right.
the best part is you can do both. But anyway, go ahead. What did
Right.
you
Yeah,
find out in
totally.
this article?
So basically the people who have hearing aids and are over 65, they said that the Apple AirPod Pros are not sufficient replacements for hearing aids, although they work well as a complement. So a couple things, with their battery life is a lot shorter, so they'll anywhere from like 3 to 6 hours, and you have to recharge it. And so that doesn't really work for all day wear. And what they were saying was it's a lot less than they had with their professional hearing aids, or I don't even know what's a professional hearing aid anymore, but their traditional hearing aids, we'll call it. So battery life was an issue, although some people were like, oh, well, they charge fast. And other people were like, yeah, but at $200, you could buy 4 pairs and swap them out all day, and it still would be cheaper than my hearing aids. So battery life, pick your poison.
I'm
But
sorry for my ignorance, but do they recharge hearing aids, or do they have like little batteries that you
yeah,
replace, or they're rechargeable?
they're rechargeable. Yeah,
Okay.
rechargeable. I mean, probably back in the day they weren't, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just like a USB recharge, like anything
Oh,
else
okay.
these days. Yeah. hmm So battery life is an issue. Um, there's also just, I guess, certain times they're good and certain times that they're bad. So like they work really well when they pair with a phone, your iPhone or your computer or something. So there, a lot of people like them just around the house to just take calls, listen to music, stream content. Apparently, they can be better than a traditional hearing aid just because they're in like the Apple ecosystem.
Okay.
Yeah, so between that and the battery life, you kind of get this theme emerging, like they're good for select uses, depending on like your other devices and what you need to hear, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's just fit issues. Like Apple gives them with 4 different tip types, so kind of like that the part that goes in your ear. You can have different shapes, but some people were like, there was a big theme that just like they fall out. So
Yeah.
if
They
you're
do.
getting firewood outside, your hearing aid at this point now is falling out. Or if you're bending over, or you're cooking, or you're doing anything, it can fall
Right.
out. And so
Yeah.
that was another reason why it wasn't really a good replacement. And then the last thing is just they look like you're wearing headphones.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're talking to someone and they're like, "Are you listening to me?" Or
You're in a restaurant
yeah,
with six people at a really nice
yeah.
restaurant, and you're sitting there wearing earbuds
Yeah, someone was
like a
like, "I don't want to
douche.
sit in a business meeting. I don't want to go sit
Right.
on in a doctor's office and be wearing
Yeah.
AirPods."
Yeah.
So I think that's a really big one. And
Yeah.
and so just between all these things, it seemed like the consensus was they're good. People are loving them for certain things,
Yeah.
but they also are keeping their hearing aids, and now they
Right.
kind of have more tools in their toolbox, but they
Yep.
still have the old hearing aids.
Yeah, and at those prices, it's trivial for somebody with hearing loss to just also
hmm
have the latest AirPods
hmm
Pro, and just have them there. I mean, you can imagine like waking up at night and wanting to hear for like 2 minutes
Yeah.
before going back to bed or something, and you just pop those in, pop one in,
hmm
whatever, and just you have hearing, you have
hmm
better hearing for a little while. This reminds me of a thing that happened in tech. There was a craze 12, 15 years ago of what they called hearables at the time. And there were a bunch of companies that came up. There was a couple of really innovative companies in Oakland, California, of all things. And they came out with these hearable devices. And they were essentially like hearing aids. They were also usable as Bluetooth earbuds or whatever.
Right.
And the promise, and again, these are startups guzzling the venture capital, not making any money. Everything was in R&D. They had were not showing fully functional products, but what they were promising was a world in which you could put these things in your ears and you open an app on your smartphone and you could just choose what you would hear. So one of the famous examples would be you're on an airplane and there's a
hmm
baby crying. So you just dial up the app and say, I want to hear everything except the baby.
Baby,
And
you're
then the baby
canceled.
goes silent, right? You still have a conversation. I definitely want to hear it when they come with the cocktail cart. I want to turn that one up. But it was the idea that you could
Wow.
custom tailor every single sound you wanted to hear. You could. They gave these use cases where you would be on a bicycle, and you'd listen to music while on your bicycle, but every little piece of noise that would be helpful for you not dying on
Right.
your bicycle, like car coming, honking, whatever, you'd hear all that stuff more than you would without them on. Anyway, it was a wonderful world. I totally was guzzling the Kool-Aid on these things. I wrote a bunch of articles. This is going to be great. We're right on the corner. This AI is going to do this stuff for us. And they all just kind of petered out and went away. And
Hmm.
then nobody was talking about that sort of granular hearing ability. Uh, and then Apple came along and they kind of sort of do that because they have some noise cancellation features, or you turn it up, turn it down. There was another app that I tried out for years, and it was too much of a security risk. But basically, what it did was you would in any hearing device, third party hearing device, it was just an app basically for smartphone, but it would crank the sound coming into the microphone of your phone or your
Hmm.
tablet. And they were afraid that people were just going to use it as a spying device. Just throw your phone under a couch and just go in the other room and listen to the conversations, stuff like
Right.
that. So that kind of went away as well.
Yeah.
I just think there's so much possibility with we have noise cancellation, but it would be great, wouldn't it, to have lots of options in the noise cancellation about what's canceled and
Hmm.
what isn't.
Hmm. They
Uh,
have that, so there is a lot going on with hearing aids. I know this is not a sexy space, but it's, I think, a real problem that can have a real solution with tech, which is rare these days, especially with how vague AI is. But what really good use for AI is hearing aids. For years now, the good ones have been able to say, like, if I'm talking just to you, it'll only amplify your voice. So if you're like face to face with me, let's say
yeah.
you're in a coffee shop, like that's
Yes.
nightmare for someone wearing a hearing aid. It mutes everyone and it figures out who you're talking to and it boosts them. Like that's great. That's game
That's
changing.
great. This is one of
Yeah.
the reasons why old people are so grumpy sometimes. Is like they in a
Yeah.
loud thing they
They
can't
can't go out
distinguish between
anymore.
noises. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So then that
it's
actually
really
can affect your lifespan. It's depressing.
it also there's a lot of research that points out that when people don't aren't able to see well because
Hmm.
they don't update their glasses prescriptions or whatever, and when they're not able to hear well, there's a lot faster a dramatically faster
Decline.
rate of cognitive decline.
Right.
So one of the ways you can stay sharp mentally is making sure that you can see clearly and hear clearly. And this would be a fantastic boon to be able to do that. And
Hmm.
something so simple as to like which way your face is pointed, like whoever you're looking at, you hear that person, and obviously optimized for the human voice and all that kind of stuff. That would
Yep.
be once they
It's
perfect
doing
that
that. Yeah.
technology. Yeah,
I was
yeah,
surprised people didn't really mention any cool capabilities like that with Apple. I think that must be part of the price because, I mean, other hearing aids you can get, there's a company called Eargo that makes really great hearing aids. It does all this stuff that are like $1,000 or less. And that's still more though than the $200 ones from Apple. But if you want like cool AI tech in hearing aids that has very much been around for at least 5 years, like that's definitely out there and it's over the counter now.
yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, this idea of being social and being able to hear people may be irrelevant soon anyway, because the tech companies are doing a great job of simulating humans. So we don't need those pesky biological versions. This has actually been an interesting week for chatbots that are trying to be more natural, more human, and all this kind of stuff. For example, one of them is called Tolan. Now, Tolan has been around. You may have heard about Tolan
I've
because it's.
never heard of Tolan.
I hadn't either until this week, but it's been in a kind of a beta program
Hmm.
until the 27th, I think, of February. So Tolan is a really irritating app that has. So Tolans are aliens. So they invented this whole world of this alien planet. And when you
So
download,
over the sci-fi crap in the
yeah,
tech
well,
space.
but it's really cartoonish, and I was shocked to learn that their target audience is like college aged women
Okay,
and young
whoa.
adults with active social lives, and I'm like, how about 6 year olds who are latchkey kids? So wouldn't that be a more? But anyway, it's these Tolans are aliens, and they give you a custom alien that nobody else, no other user has. So it's like nobody has this your
Okay.
special combination of purple and green like tentacles and all that kind of stuff. So
Is it like a Tamagotchi, like a tech pet, but it's An
Yeah,
AI?
but a chat bot,
Okay,
and they
but a
they speak,
chatbot.
they speak articulate. I tried to use it, and I just couldn't get past the intro. They're like, "Oh, tell us something special about yourself." I'm like, "Something's really special about myself. I don't have time for this shit, man." And I just deleted the app. But anyway, but they basically, you live on this planet, and they claim that it learns about you and customizes itself to you, and it
Wow.
does weird, objectionable things. Like, for example, if you ask it if it's a chatbot or AI, it will deny it and insist that it's an alien from another
Hmm.
planet. So that's vexing. Another one that came out, and people have been writing about it this last week, is from a company called Sesame, and they have a male and a female voice named Maya and Miles, which I appreciated because those are the main characters in the movie Sideways.
Yeah,
I was super
it's a
disappointed that
great
Miles
movie.
didn't sound exactly like Paul Giamatti. I would love a chatbot that sounded like Paul Giamatti, and one that got all stressed out and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Wait, so can I
But
just ask, so how are you receiving these? Is there any visual or is it chat interface?
so the Tolan is a mobile app on iOS and Android, and it's visual.
Okay.
There's a cartoon, really cartoonish, like really low res cartoony kind of a
Hmm.
character sitting there with the facial expressions and body language
Oh,
and
okay.
talking to
There's
you.
not like a video game where you're walking around a world and exploring a
No,
world.
is
It's
it's
just
sort of
one
hovering on your
character.
phone. Yeah, I mean,
Mm,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure I did like I mentioned, I didn't
So it's like
really use
Clippy.
it. Yeah, I see you're trying
Like,
to write a document. Yeah, it's like
yeah, it's like a
that.
little thing that's just there, like, hello, with
Yes,
eyes.
yes, right.
Okay.
Well, speaking of Tamagotchis, there was a horrible hackathon somewhere this last week where some developer wrote this really noxious tool where it's a vape
Yeah.
pipe or whatever they call a vape thing.
Pipe.
What do they call it? A
Just a
vaping
vape.
device? A
Just a
vape.
vape.
It's a
Vape.
vape with a screen
Yeah.
on it, and it has a Tamagotchi like thing on it. And if you don't puff away, it will die. The little character. So to keep it alive, you have to
Very
kill
healthy.
yourself.
Excellent.
So that was really stupid. But anyway, Sesame is this other one with Miles and Maya. There's no visuals on this. It's just a voice. But we were talking about the Pi.ai voice
Hmm.
that, and we're laughing at it, and I was imitating it. Voice number 4 on Pi,
Hmm.
which is like this, this young woman. Well, this actually sounds just like that woman, but vastly more irritating. Like really really like over the top, a lot of breathing and interesting.
Ew.
Wow, okay, and like all that kind of stuff. And I tried to use it, and I didn't make it past like a minute and a half because I was just like, oh, enough already with this. It's like really over the top. Some other tech writers have been writing about how it was
Hmm.
so realistic and so human like that they had to stop using it.
Interesting.
In other words, everybody's got a different reason why they want to stop using it.
Well, this is really interesting. You're getting like a full menu of all kinds of AI companions that I was
Yes.
not aware of at all, like the
Yeah.
the vape or the
Well,
Clippy Redux.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Tolan and Sesame are real. The vape thing is not real. It's a hacker
Oh,
project or
okay, got it.
whatever. It's just
Yeah.
funny, but and then there's another one which I've been using. Of course, I've been using Perplexity. I pay for Perplexity, and I use it for a
Hmm.
whole bunch of different uses. And they have a newish sort of model that's called Deep Research, which is really time consuming and but results in like very thorough results. Like it's
Hmm.
very detailed thorough results, which can be interesting. It isn't also interesting in the sense that you tell it specifically, I want the answer in bullet points, make sure you give it to me in bullet points, and it just can't do it. It just gives you this
Wow.
essay, and then after it gives you the
Annoying.
essay, you say I said bullet points, and then it apologizes to give you bullet points. It's a weird little let's call it a bug.
Yeah.
But Perplexity Voice, which is something that I used to use just for quick and dirty, like what's the capital
Hmm.
of North Dakota type of information. The way it used to work is you'd open the app.
Bismarck. It's a Bismarck.
I have to ask Perplexity, but you used to push this button for voice, and then it would take you to an
I'll look it
interface
up.
where there was another button, and you would press and hold the button like a walkie-talkie while you were asking the question, and let go when you were done. And that was too hard. So they have a new one that's where you can toggle in the settings. You can toggle between, sort of always listening or only listen when, when spoken to or whatever. And you can just leave this thing open on your desk, sort of like Pi works. The Pi app works this way too. And it's Perplexity, so it gives you pretty good answers. There's only like 5 voices there. None of them are great. None of them are crucially. None of them are like trying to be super personality like. They're not chatty. They don't ask you questions. It just answers your questions in a fairly straightforward manner. So it's much more usable. And so for some uses, if you're walking around or you're just sitting at your desk, and you can just leave it open and you just basically just talk to it, and it will just give you a pretty good answer pretty quickly. So that's another way to approach human-like interaction, in the sense that it's just sort of in the room listening. And finally, I don't think there will ever be an episode of this where we don't talk about Elon Musk. There is Grok. So
Yes.
Grok came out with version 3. There's a what they're calling an unhinged mode. This is not like ludicrous mode or something like that in the Tesla, which is an actual product that's
Right.
named that by Grok people. But you can just basically tell Grok, I want you to be uncensored. I want you to be unfiltered. I want you to be quote unquote unhinged. I ask it about unhinged. Do you have an unhinged mode? And it's like, well, people call it unhinged, but it's really blah, blah, blah. And so it knew about the people calling it unhinged mode. And then I ask it to tell me about Vladimir Putin, and it just, wasn't as quite as fun as I hoped it would be, but it was mocking him for going shirtless, riding horses, and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I
And
feel like in that mode, it's trying to be like where you want to go to the bar with Grok. Like you want
yeah,
Grok to have a few drinks and be loose with its language, kind of, I guess.
that would be an interesting feature for a chatbot.
Yeah.
Just getting over the next 3 hours, just get drunker and drunker,
Yeah.
and to the
Yeah.
point where you're just mumbling to yourself in the
Right.
corner by the end.
Exactly.
That would
Right.
be great. That would be very productive and useful.
Right.
Anyway, so this all this stuff, to the best of my knowledge, emerged in the past week.
Right.
And so there seems to be this full court press by the industry to humanize in different ways, everything from being overly chatty to being, unfiltered and using profanity for Grok. And so it's all out there. All the usual caveats apply about this, that the direction our species is going in, where we don't talk to people, we talk to apps, and apps have qualities that people don't have. They don't get offended. They don't get, they don't nag us and annoy us and abuse us and all that stuff. So something to look out for. But anyway, the technology is getting better and better by the day.
Yeah. Wow. It's a really amazing sample platter of what's happening, because I'm not trying any of those things. I don't think I've found one that speaks to me. Maybe if there's one that convinces me. That's what they're trying to do, right? Like just put everything out there and find the customer for it, like
Yes.
college-aged women, or who's the customer for Grok Unhinged. I mean, I think I can picture that one.
Right.
But
X
there
users.
isn't one for me. Like, do you really feel like there's one for you?
Uh, I mean, I rarely use just the voice thing. I mean, I often use, I often wear my Meta smart glasses, and they have Meta AI in there. But wearing the smart glasses, I can turn on the Perplexity voice and leave it running. And so I can just chit
Right.
chat
And you
with
like
that.
that. Yeah.
Very occasionally, when I'm in a situation where I just want to know lots of information, where I want to ask, like, what's going on with this? What's this? And it's kind of fun. But I don't want one of these things to be my friend. I just want to be able to just ask him. I mean, think about that scenario. So wearing Meta glasses, Ray-Ban Meta glasses in public, walking around in a city, nobody knows I'm wearing. Nobody knows I'm listening to anything.
Right.
Or any of that stuff. And I'm just a person talking to himself. So I look totally normal in a big city.
That's how people
And
look with AirPods in, by the way.
exactly. But if you can see the AirPods,
But
you're like,
now
oh,
everyone's
maybe they're
used
on
to
the
it.
phone. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
you don't have any visible, but I can just, without any effort, without pushing a button, without launching an app, without doing anything, I can just get knowledge
Yeah.
a basic knowledge about stuff, and it's kind of cool. I mean, I kind of like that, but mostly I spend most of my life sitting in front of a laptop, and when I'm sitting in front of a laptop, I use a variety of tools for getting information, for processing information, for bouncing ideas off, whatever. But none of them are voice. They're all,
Right.
I type in and I get text back.
I didn't even put this on our agenda for today, but I went to the reveal of the new Amazon Alexa this week in New
Oh, you
York.
did?
Yeah, so I went. It was cool because they don't live stream it, so you kind of like have to be there, and they don't post the video either. So that's nice. It makes you
Wow.
feel like, oh, it's worth me
Yeah,
coming.
you
I
feel
saw
special.
something here. Yeah, and Amazon CEO was there, so it was a really big event for them. All the big people, like the Panos Pane guy who used to work at Microsoft, who I had never met or heard of before, and he got on stage was talking about, if you remember the first moment you ever asked Alexa a question, like what a moment! And he was just trying to set the stage, and I was like, "Ooh, this guy's a wacko." But he gave a whole presentation on the new Alexa, and it was impressive. It was very human like. It really was, at least the demos that they gave. And I guess the big thing is that it can also take actions for you. So, like, you could put your phone up to your mouth, or just I guess if you're walking around the kitchen, it's more like an Alexa thing, and say, like, text mom, I'm on the way. And it would do that, which
Yeah,
would be a massive improvement from my Alexa, which is absolutely collecting dust in my living room and can't
right.
even do anything at this point, like
Are,
train wreck.
are they calling it an Echo, or what's the brand name of the physical device?
So that's the thing. There is no physical device associated with it now. It's just
Oh,
Alexa Plus.
oh, okay, okay.
Yes. So they actually showed it on the Echo Show, which is an Alexa device with a screen.
I see.
So they're adding little emoticons that go with the voice. They're trying to like make
Hmm.
it more expressive. What do they call it? Like Alexicons or something. I don't know. They had a little thing.
Alexicon is good. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But it was just the same thing, like voice demos on stage. You don't know if it was prepared before or not. Of course, they say, "Oh, I'm so nervous. I'm trying this on stage for the first time," and they kind of make it seem like the stakes are high. But they didn't allow us to interact with the product ourselves, so there was
Yeah.
there were no hands-on demos, so we really couldn't try it. But so that's launching, and then next month, I guess it's already March this month, and it's going to be free with Prime, which is big.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, there is gonna a separate version that's $20 a month that I suspect is where they will add their most advanced features and make the Prime kind of like a teaser commercial to get you to buy the other one because at 20
Yeah,
bucks a month it's more expensive than Prime. So yeah,
yeah,
that's what Amazon's up to. I just think it's like, can they make Alexa cool again? I'll believe it when I see it.
yeah. They were one of the first companies to have what do they call them? They had some glasses that let you
Oh,
talk to
really?
Alexa,
Huh.
and they really dropped the ball on that because they
They
they could
dropped
have
the ball on
been.
the whole thing, the
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
voice tech. Yeah.
they killed it with the original Echo. They in
Mm-hmm.
2010 they came out with the
Mm-hmm.
Echo, and there was 2 years where there was nothing else really,
Yeah.
and so that was a really astonishing thing, and they could have and should have done that with the glasses 5 years ago because they're
Mm-hmm.
really just dealing with with Alexa in
Right.
glasses. That's a fairly compelling use case, or at least it was like 2 years ago. Today, with Meta out there, Meta's, I don't know if you can hear Meta, but
Alexa.
Alexa
Yeah.
just
Turned on.
doing the whatever the opposite of minding your own business is. But they could have succeeded with that, and they kind of dropped the ball on that. They kind of it was kind of obvious to me that the
Mm-hmm.
next hardware for Alexa would have been glasses, and they had these bad glasses. Nobody wanted to buy them. They weren't
Yep.
particularly inexpensive. They weren't particularly compelling. They didn't look that great, and they could have just killed it,
They
but
could have killed
they
it. Now they're
failed.
playing, yeah, now they're playing catch up and they're
Right.
trying to have this big event in New York and make it seem like they're first to market with something that they are not.
Right. If you're going
Because,
to pay $20
yeah,
for an LLM of any
yeah,
kind, it's not going to be Alexa. You're going to get
I
some
know.
ChatGPT or some other like major company.
See,
This
I
Alexa
just
again.
heard she said to you, I'm not sure how to help you with that. Like, she's so
Yes,
bad.
but making our point, right? They
Like,
they
it's
really
so
don't know how to
bad.
help us with
Yeah,
with with that. So
right. Yeah. So speaking of ChatGPT,
Yeah.
OpenAI launched a new model this week, which theoretically should be big news, but it kind of flopped really hard. So OpenAI ran out of GPUs ahead of the launch and was only able to debut this new model, which is GPT 4.5, for the most expensive paid tier that it has, which is Pro, which is $200 a month. So there Sam Altman did this post on Twitter that was like, hey, like we have the GPT 4.5 is here, like wow. And that's theoretically a big deal because GPT 5 they're saying is like this the big kahuna, like it's going to get so much closer to AGI, and they've been talking so much game about GPT 5 for like a year or two now. It's still not here. So they're saying, oh, GPT 4.5 is here, wow, we're getting closer. But there were so many caveats in the launch post from Sam Altman. It was just like, are you guys excited about this? I'm not sure. So, first of all, he said, good news, the model's here. This is literally the structure of his post. Good news. And then the second line was bad news. It's extremely expensive. He said it's a giant, comma, expensive model.
Hmm.
And they ran out of GPUs. So it's like super crazy expensive for developers to use. It's $75 per million tokens. And the model before that, O1, is $15 per million tokens. So it's 75 versus 15, huge jump.
Hmm.
Very tone deaf, especially when DeepSeek comes in below
Right.
that. And then they could only release it to like super premium paid subscribers. So it's almost like if it falls in a forest, did anyone hear it? Like,
Right.
no. So this is their big release, and sorry, I just remembered another one. They said also it doesn't look better in the metrics than O1. So so they, it was so nuts. I was like, I know the stock went down this week,
Yeah.
but why is no one saying that it should be for this reason? Like,
Yeah.
it
It
was just so
sucks.
bad.
It's not available. It's super expensive, but we're
And
really
yeah, but we're
excited
really
about it.
excited about it. He was like, "Oh, there's the magic. You have to try it." And so they were saying that has a higher EQ, it's more human-like, and they struggled to figure out how to measure that. And they actually said they created a new test for vibes and creativity. So they're
Hmm.
looking at new benchmarks. They didn't publish any of those that I saw, so I don't know what the heck OpenAI is doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there will come a day. It probably wasn't this last week, but there will come a day when it'll be kind of like smartphones, which where each new version that comes out will be like, yeah, whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the price competition will squeeze everyone, and it'll be a tough business to just do a
Yeah.
chatbot. And I think the real money will be for enterprise applications that are highly specialized and personally trainable using your own data and stuff like that. I think there'd be money in that sort of thing. But these sort of general purpose chatbots, the days when anybody will pay $200 a month are numbered. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine how many people are paying for this other than OpenAI employees. And
Yeah, like maybe I think maybe small businesses because individuals who are serious about AI are on ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month again.
yeah, people who expense their
Yeah,
chatbots are going to be paying
exactly.
for this,
Right. I think a couple episodes ago we talked about, I said like in the future there'll just be an interface and you'll ask a question, you won't know which model answers it.
right?
So that's actually definitely the reality I've kind of learned since that episode. So
Hmm.
Amazon is doing that. So behind Alexa and all of its AI systems is just going to be a deep bench of possible chatbots, and it will
Yep.
select the one that answers your question.
Yep.
And OpenAI, they also said like they're trying to get move past this point where there are like all these different models with all these different O1, O2, 0.546, like all these crazy terminology that consumers
Hmm.
can't keep track of. They're working towards removing that on ChatGPT and doing the same thing of automating the model. So in that way, the 4.5 release is also kind of almost outdated even already for the AI world. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you launched a model that has a very specific skill that you can't measure, you can't publicly say, it's so expensive, it's only for certain people in certain use cases. Like just release it in the background. Like
Yeah.
don't try to make it this big PR moment if you don't
Right.
believe in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
that was
And
my take on that.
I mean, yeah, Perplexity does, has a, the default mode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
for Perplexity Pros is it will automatically pick its source, and one of them is Wolfram Alpha. If you
Wolfram
say
Alpha. What
what's
is that?
it's Wolfram Alpha is a well, Stephen Wolfram is a super math genius guy. His blog is actually really interesting. He's a great explainer. He's a great innovator. He's got a company that's very, very inventive and innovative, but they do lots of math stuff. And they
Okay.
have API access to their super math brain thing. And so if you go to Perplexity and you say, what's the exchange rate of so and so divided by the square root of something or other, it'll go, well, let's have Stephen Wolfram tell us about that. And it like kicks over to Wolfram Alpha and they show you all the calculations, stuff like that, which is really useful because Perplexity in general, if it doesn't use Wolfram Alpha, is terrible at any sort
Hmm.
of numbers.
That's really interesting that
Yeah,
they're outsourcing that pretty openly, where the whole game used to be how good is the model at math. And now
right.
companies are just like, yeah, our model's not that good at math, but Wolfram Alpha is pretty good at it and was popular over there.
Exactly. And Kevin, who's our producer and is my son, his
And
company's
we love
Chatterbox, and
Kevin.
yeah, and it's basically for kids, anybody over the age of 8, roughly, can build a sort of a chatbot or a personal assistant, a Amazon Echo type device. They build it out of cardboard, and then they basically using the skills builder that he has can build skills that include Wolfram Alpha. So they teach even kids how to use the Wolfram Alpha API. I mean, they're not doing coding. This is like putting Legos together, just like all these
Hmm.
components. And Wolfram Alpha is a really great, you know, thing for chatbots generally. So anyway, I would encourage everybody to check him out. I follow his, I guess it's a blog, Stephen
Hmm.
Wolfram.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So we'll see what happens. But I think OpenAI is, I don't know, that's such a turbulent company. Elon
True.
Musk wants to buy them. They're like, hell no. They fire their CEO. Then he comes back, and then there's like a coup with the board, and there's a big
Hmm.
argument and endless argument about whether they're true to their original intent, which is to be open source and sort of benefit mankind, or if they're just going for the money. And
Right.
so it's kind of an odd company to be the leader in this AI movement. I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, have you heard about the whole thing with his sister too?
No, he's got a sister.
Sam Altman has a sister who has a very public, I mean, okay, I'm going to brace yourself for what I'm about to say. So she has a very public campaign to say that Sam Altman molested her whole life.
Wow.
So she is has talked about how there were issues in the family. He was repressed in his sexuality, and he molested her. And so she has gone on about that in multiple different forums. I posted about it on TikTok, and she actually like responded to it. So I've like spoken to her on TikTok, and I don't know. And Sam Altman has posted on X like we're very concerned about Annie, like basically saying Annie's crazy, Annie Altman.
Yeah.
He's like completely discrediting her and saying everyone in the family thinks she's crazy. So that
Yeah.
that hasn't gotten a lot of airtime because I don't think anyone
Wow.
knows what the heck to do with that information. But it's
Right.
just one of the many weird vibes swirling on
Yeah.
Sam Altman specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. I am shocked that I have not heard about that, but
Yeah, it's out there. You can Google it, and you'll see the interview she gave, and you'll see he's acknowledged it on his in his ex post. So yeah,
hmm.
that's happening. It's not really entered the zeitgeist because it's
Folks, if
confusing.
you want to know this kind of stuff, which is important to know if you're following Silicon Valley, you have to listen to the Unicorn Roast podcast because this is where this kind of information is, where you can learn this stuff. So,
Hmm. Well, a lot of
as I
people
have,
respond and repost my TikTok video, and they say like, "Why is no one talking about this? Why is no one talking about this?" And so there's a
yeah,
small subset of people who are trying to make it a thing, but
hmm,
just with all the money and the politics surrounding AI, and also probably the fact that it's a very male-dominated space,
hmm,
this one just hasn't made the cut.
yeah. I think it's important. We all need to learn the skill if we're doing social media, of talking about this kind of stuff without jumping to conclusions, picking
Mm-hmm.
sides without enough information. And but it should be talked about, and we should be aware of what's going on,
Yeah, I mean, the
without
reporting
saying,
I've done is just like, she said this. So
yeah,
that is what happened. She
yeah,
said that. She has continued to say it. I think there is some lawsuit going on, probably, which is why he posted about it, or some arrangement they've made. So
hmm,
I'm not commenting on the truth of it or not. I'm just saying
yeah,
this is a thing that is happening in the Altman family that they're talking about.
yes. Thanksgivings are very awkward. The Altman family.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, we've blown past an hour or so. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we zip it up?
I think I'm good. I mean, I know we had a couple other topics, but I think this was far reaching and a lot of fun. So I'm
Yeah,
satisfied.
great. All right. Well, you've made it through another episode of the Unicorn Roast podcast with Mike Elgin and Emily Forlini. This podcast has no paywall, no ads, and no sponsors. All we ask from you is a 5-star rating and a glowing review. Follow us, subscribe, and get links and show notes at our website, unicornroast.com. We'll see you next week.
Unicorn Roast.